Good afternoon. I'm Dennis Galucki. Welcome to the 513th Imagine Greater program, as well as our 135th YouTube program, hosted by our wonderful Buffalo and Erie County Public Library. Now, this program is created by the Center for the Study of Art, Architecture, History, and Nature, C-SAAHN, and it takes those four elements, and each Tuesday has speakers focusing on those. This is the fourth Tuesday, so we're looking at nature and science. And as you'll see, our speaker perfectly matches this. It's also brought to you by ImagineLifelongLearning.com. Now, before we get started, just a little housekeeping. Everyone watching will be muted and your video turned off. If you have a question or comment, please type it into the chat box and we'll go through as many as possible at the end of the presentation. We are recording this program so you can watch it again later on the Downtown Central Library's Facebook page, as well as their YouTube channel. And we certainly hope you share the link with others. Now, there are two themes in this Imagine series. Imagine Greater Buffalo as a premier cultural and nature center. And our second one is to imagine a healthy, wealthy, and sustainable community. Both of these will be touched and incorporated actually in today's presentation, I'm sure. Our featured speaker is Margaret Wooster. Margaret is a Buffalo native who holds a PhD in English and a master's in urban environmental planning from both are from the University at Buffalo. After teaching English for several years, she changed course to do environmental planning and advocacy work in the Great Lakes Buffalo-Niagara bioregion. She was founding member of Friends of the Buffalo River, now Buffalo-Niagara Waterkeeper, where she created the Watershed Learning Project with middle schools in the Buffalo-Niagara watershed on both sides of the border. National Geographic featured this project in its 1990 television special, The Power of Water. Margaret worked with local governments on stream and groundwater protection, greenway planning, and habitat restoration. For 8 years, she was the executive director of Great Lakes United, a bi-national coalition of environmental labor and indigenous groups dedicated to conserving the Great Lakes St. Lawrence River ecosystem. This led to the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative, which has funded over $3 billion in ecosystem protection and restoration work. She is currently involved in a local coalition effort to restore Buffalo's post-industrial Lake Erie coast to health and resilience. Wow. Margaret, take it away.
Thanks, Dennis. Thanks, everybody, for being here. It's great to see so many names of people that I know and love. I'm honored by your participation in this today. So I've just got 10 slides. I'm going to take about 15 minutes, maybe 20, hopefully not, to go through them, to tell a story. Without further ado, I'll start telling my story. I'm working with the Imagine theme, and I'm saying imagine another way to restore and maintain the natural treasures of the Great Lakes bioregion. Clean water, biodiversity, ecosystem health, and beauty, beginning in our own backyard. The point of this is to say that we do have we live in an incredible place here in Buffalo on Lake Erie. We call the Outer Harbor, for example, our Emerald Coast because of the color of the water going over the Onondaga Escarpment, and the incredible migration of birds that comes through here, especially in the spring, for open water and food. And this photo is a February photo of gulls on the Niagara River. This happens every year. Birds on Niagara has Jay Burney has a festival, and people come from all over to watch this incredible presence of birds that come through Western New York. But we have these problems. So next slide, please. This is what we're trying to recover from. And if you look at the slide on the right side, that strip of land, that was the outer harbor in 1924. There wasn't much to it. A little bit of land, very, very industrialized. And that's the mouth of the Buffalo River coming down, and that's the city ship canal going up on the right side. And then the river you can see sort of meandering down to Lake Erie, which is just off the slide. And this is the way we were in 1924, not a blade of grass, not a tree, nothing. And in a way, what this slide in part means to me is I almost can remember, I don't go quite back to 1924, but I can almost remember when the outer harbor was like this. And it is miles away from that now. So, land can recover if we take care of it. Next. But we're still in the process of recovery, and 50 years after that photo was taken, the Great Lakes Water Quality Agreement dedicated itself to restoring and maintaining the chemical, physical, and biological integrity of the waters of the Great Lakes, and with a focus on 43 impaired areas of concern. So you can see in this slide that Niagara River and Buffalo River are 2. New York State has 6. Every one of these places, most of them anyway, were coastal places on the Great Lakes that were industrialized, and they had harbors that looked not unlike ours in 1924, wall-to-wall industry, very little knowledge or understanding in the wildlife that lives there. Basically, the blank slate approach to the Great Lakes to sort of wipe out ecosystem services and whatever was living there, because it wasn't really being looked for. What was being looked for was developable sites, shovel-ready sites, where we could build and take advantage of this wealth of water that was here, our primary claim to fame. So by 1987, when this map was made, the Great Lakes were surrounded by these areas of concern, which were basically impaired by the industrial development. And the city of Buffalo has 2. We've got the Buffalo River and we've got the Niagara River. Okay, next. So the crucial phrase in the last slide was the purpose of the agreement was to restore and maintain the waters of the Great Lakes, the physical, chemical, and biological integrity of the waters of the Great Lakes. That is a huge phrase. It's the same phrase that's used in the Clean Water Act, which was also passed around this time, a little earlier, 1972. The Clean Water Act was passed because, as you may remember, Lake Erie was burning. The result of the kind of development we saw in the earlier slide were becoming apparent all over the Great Lakes. And so the phrase is to restore and maintain the physical, chemical, and biological integrity of the waters. That's in the Clean Water Act, and it's in the Great Lakes Water Quality Agreement. And so restore to what? That has always been a question, because as you can see in 1924, and really for a generation after that, it would be anyone's guess what was here before. How was it? In what way? What wildlife lived here? Not much was known about the area before it was developed. But one thing we are rich in is the Haudenosaunee wouldn't say so, because their territories have been shrunk to a dozen reservations across New York State. But still, when you look at the health of our water, this little graph was made by the Natural Heritage Program, a subdivision of the DEC, and they were doing water quality comparisons across New York State, and they divided New York State up into watersheds. All those little lines, you see the county lines, and then you see all those little jigsaw pieces. Those are little watersheds, or even water catchment areas. And the DEC, this Natural Heritage Program, has ranked all of the waters across the state according to, I don't know, 20 or 30 markers. I can't think of the word, to tell us how healthy is this water. And so you can see the white areas are the ones with a comprehensive health score of 75% to 100%. They are the healthiest waters in the state, and there's not many, these little white patches that show up. But where they do show up, at least in Western New York, they are, at least two of them, associated with Haudenosaunee territories. So the Tonawanda territory, where the arrow is pointing to, and then the Allegheny Reservation, the Allegheny River Territory, also. And so just to say that, the Haudenosaunee were pretty good stewards of the land, and remain so. So the undeveloped floodplains, the wetlands, the grasslands and forests surrounding Middle Tonawanda Creek, that's an area that we think of as Alabama Swamp. That's sort of, running off to the north of the Tonawanda territory. All of that it is what it is, and it is what it is because, in part, the Tonawanda Seneca, who have lived there for centuries, did not succumb to these development pressures or these development enticements, and left the area pretty much natural, which is something we can enjoy today in the Iroquois National Wildlife Refuge, the biggest wildlife refuge, the biggest federal wildlife refuge in New York State, is included in part in that white area. However, the Tonawanda Seneca Nation territory and adjacent wildlife refuges are currently threatened by a mega industrial development project, the Science, Technology, and Advanced Manufacturing Park. And not enough people know this story, so the next, 6 or 7 or 8 slides are going to tell this story. Next. So, Alabama Swamp is a remnant of the 6th Great Lake, Glacial Lake Tonawanda, and part of a state significant floodplain complex. State significant floodplain complex is a moniker that occurs with the Natural Heritage Project, and the map is from them, and it's a map of the Niagara River watershed and the most significant natural areas within it. And this is in part that piece of land that underlies Alabama Swamp, those wetlands, the Iroquois National Wildlife Refuge, and so forth, and also the Tonawanda Seneca Nation. It's, I can't remember, I think over 1,000 acres of very productive, ecologically productive land. And it's floodplain. It's a floodplain complex, so it wasn't drained off or dammed or messed with in the way that other wetlands and floodplains have been, such as Tift. So the other one that they mention, this is their map, is Tift. as another state significant floodplain complex. And you can only imagine that Tift still, with its resilience and the amount of wildlife and vegetation that's there, it's incredible considering back to that first or second photograph of how it was in 1924. It's amazing that it's come back to this point. But what it was something more like this, the map on the right. It was a huge, extensive wetland, coastal wetland on Lake Erie, that was an even bigger draw for wildlife and migration of birds and animals than it is today. And I'm just showing on the right-hand side that that floodplain complex includes the border, includes the eastern edge of the Tonawanda-Seneca Nation. Next. This land is also at the heart of the Western New York Land Conservancy's Eastern Wildway, a planned migration route for plants and animals responding to climate change and habitat loss. So I don't know if they knew that stamp, which we will shortly hear about, was in the works or in the plans when they developed this map. But the stamp footprint is that red shape in the middle of this map. That's where they want to put this industrial complex. But look at what's next to it: the Tonawanda-Seneca Nation, the Iroquois National Wildlife Refuge in blue, and then all of these wildlife management areas in orange or yellow. So, and the migration that they're talking about is, the migration anticipated that animals, and are already doing, moving north to more hospitable land where they can survive. And this area is, has been called, even by some of the DEC managers, the most significant wetland area east of the Mississippi. It's sort of like, to me, it sort of balances off the Adirondacks as our forever wild mountain area of 6 million acres. Here we have an area smaller, but also quite expansive, of several thousand acres, that is lowland, wetland, and completely necessary and part of our water cycle, our hydrologic regime in Western New York. This land is as necessary to us as it is to the birds and the animals that use it. Okay, next. So here's the heart of the story. The stamp site is in green, and the Tonawanda-Seneca Nation territory is on right to the left. And you can see Tonawanda Creek flowing through the reservation. You can see the Big Woods, which is a really important place to the Seneca Nation. It's where they hunt and where they gather all kinds of food and medicines. And not only them, but the Haudenosaunee from across the state, which is why they've been very involved in this attempt to protect the Tonawanda territory from the encroachments of stamp. So here, the Genesee County Economic Development Center, GCEDC, acquired 1,200 acres of habitat to build stamp with the intent to access federal subsidies for microchip fabrication. That was when we were talking about, stealing this business from China. We didn't have enough local or national homegrown microchips, and so there were federal subsidies for this. But then not so much anymore. And so this project started over 10 years ago. And the first tenant was a hydrogen fuel cell manufacturer called Plug Power. It's the only fully committed tenant so far. And but there are others in the wings getting ready, including what is it called? An Amazon, sort of not Amazon, but a warehouse facility, and a vacuum, Edwards vacuum. Well, you'll see it in a minute. that's in the next slide. The point is that these three are plug power is already there. The other two are getting ready to go. They've signed contracts. I don't know what exactly. They haven't actually begun to build. And in order to entice them and to make it seem shovel ready, the GCEDC is clearing large parts of this 1,200 acre site, for, ready to build. And so they've been getting permits, but since I got involved, the permit that we started with was the full campus incidental take permit, which is a permit to basically destroy habitat for endangered and threatened species. So you're not supposed to do that, but if you can convince the DEC that it's somehow okay, you can do it. And so they applied for a full campus incidental take permit because there are endangered and threatened species that are known to occupy the site. Basically the short-eared owl, the northern harrier, but there are more now, the long-eared bat, and a couple more. And they're basically taking advantage of the habitat that is there, which produces meadow voles by the thousands, which is their favorite food. So they hunt that area, or they used to, but as land is cleared and traffic mounts, those species are going to disappear, possibly from New York State, as this is one of the few habitats that was left for them in New York State. Oh, excuse me, I have to go. I'll be right back. So sorry. My husband is vacuum cleaning out there. I hope that doesn't happen anymore. So, okay, let's keep going. Next slide. Here's a picture of the stamp plan. And you can see on the left side of this slide the long border with the Tonawanda Seneca. They did get a buffer agreement there of about, I don't know, 200 feet, I think. But this is what they plan to put in. So you can see plug power right down there, just south of center. You can see Edwards vacuum. That's has to do with microchip fabrication. These, to keep the inside of the factory completely dust free. And then you can see the warehouses up on the upper left that are associated with these businesses. Now, as I say, they aren't all built yet, but this is what they want to do. And then, of course, there's all sorts of other ideas. The point is that they've begun to clear the site. They've put in a lot of infrastructure. They're promising a lot of jobs, but there's really not much there yet, except stuff that's been removed. So they want a water pipeline for over 6 million gallons a day of water piped in from Niagara, from the power project. They want a wastewater plant and pipeline discharging to Oak Orchard Creek, which is to the north of here. They want roads for that will take up to 600 diesel trucks and 800 car trips per day. And if you know Route 63 and 77, which goes north and south here, up the right side of this map, it's already becoming a really busy road, and power lines and other infrastructure. So basically, they've taken one of New York State's most valuable habitats and are making it shovel ready for a lot of businesses that they are really trying to entice to be here. So the microchip manufacturer has yet to appear, and the effects, the climate change impacts, have yet to be analyzed. They haven't. There is no information about what this development will do in terms of climate change in our area, in terms of water levels, water quality, etc. Next. So they have been proceeding permit by permit, hearing by hearing for the last, I think Plug Power started, I don't know, maybe 5 years ago. For the last 5 years at least, they've been building, trying to build this and that, and going permit by permit. No overview, no understanding by the people surrounding of what the full plan will be. But opposition is mounting and the negative impacts are becoming ever more apparent. So the Tonawanda Seneca Nation continues to oppose STAMP, and you can read that quote for yourself. They object to the pipeline, to the wastewater treatment facility, and everything. We do not want our territory people or future generations to be burdened by the negative impacts of these projects. And they and we, a lot of environmental groups have joined them in weighing in on this. We had a public hearing on May 11th, and on the request to destroy habitat for the endangered species. Over 200 people attended, many of them Tonawanda Seneca, most of them I think, but all opposed to this permit. And DEC Region 8 approved it shortly thereafter. And then even the Buffalo News, the editorial board has gotten involved, and they had a piece called The Problematic Pipeline, in which they've objected to the 9-mile pipeline that will conduct wastewater from STAMP through the Iroquois National Wildlife Refuge and into Oak Orchard Creek, which is very important to Orleans County and to their economy because it's a fishing creek adjacent to Lake Ontario, and it's a very big economic producer for them. And they were not consulted about this pipeline coming through and discharging into their creek. So so that's the question that that the Buffalo News is asking. Okay, next. All right, so this is my last slide. Is there another way? So it's very hard to stop something once it's gone this far, but many groups are working on strategies to better account for and protect the values of our natural lands and waters, including the Western New York Environmental Alliance, which is hosting a workshop on an initiative called 30 by 30 to protect 30% of our natural land by 2030. And this is a sort of policy goal at the global level through the United Nations, at the federal level, and individual states, including New York. So we are having a meeting on Saturday, November 11th at the Buffalo Museum of Science. All are invited. We will be talking about 30 by 30, about a way to get our decision makers to value the values of natural land, and as we're losing it, and you can see if you read that quote that we've taken 95% of the natural world and made it unnatural in the U.S. That means all the urban stuff, but also agriculture, 95%, carving it up, fragmenting habitat. We need to turn this around. And so that's what the conversation is about. How do we do that? How do we get our decision makers to value that? So I hope some of you will come on Saturday, November 11th, to the museum. And with that, I'm gonna stop talking and open it up to questions.
Well, Margaret, that's quite an area of detail that you've given us and made us aware of almost a collision course that we've been on for some time and is as current as today's headlines. Buffalo News, Tech Hub winners. There you go. Hard to see it in there, but the headlines were one of 31 competing cities and regions for this Tech Hub Award, National Tech Award, and we have a good chance of winning it. And my guess is that that's part of the Buffalo, Rochester, Syracuse strategy to locate it in either the Stamp area, or the Syracuse area that they developed for the Micron bid, which would make a great deal of sense. So what do? Save the planet or create jobs? And that often is the question. I'll ask this question of you, and it just strikes me, all three cities, Buffalo, Rochester, and Syracuse, I'm pretty sure have an awful lot of industrial brownfields, vacant land. Add Lackawanna into that mix, and just picture the infrastructure is in place. The people live here. They don't have to drive and commute 30, 40 miles to a job. You don't have to scrape away the soil and the natural watershed areas as you've described. Why don't cities think that way in positioning their request for growth, to grow within rather than out there in the wilderness, so to speak, in the wild? Why do you think?
Well, working with the Seneca gives one some insight into that, because there's an awareness now more than ever among indigenous people across America of the doctrine of discovery, which is, this understanding that when this land was discovered and by Columbus and everybody else, and then settled, the people who were coming were fleeing something, but they were also coming, to make money, basically. They weren't coming to for the resources or the beauty. Of course, that was probably part of it, but it was an opportunity. And so there is a settler mindset of taking, take what you can get, take whatever you can get. One of the land use planners called it the last raiding of the cornucopia, of nature's great cornucopia, was the settlement of the U.S. And so I think that's a mindset that maintains. It's very hard to fight it. The economic development agencies are really the ones who are pushing this, and they are, they're state and county organizations, but they are pushing it because because the only real justification that they need is that it will make money. And that often turns out not to be the case. I mean, these 9,000 jobs that are promised, I think Plug Power is Plug Power, which is the only tenant there after 10 or 12 years, has, I don't know, a couple, maybe 100, maybe it's 120. That's the jobs that are there. So, and we know that about these economic development agencies, that they promise jobs, but they don't deliver. So I just think that we, maybe as non-native to this world and not having had generations living here, not having those stories and that understanding of these places for what they are, we're still blind to what they are. And so that is what I think a lot of environmental groups are trying to open up. Let's see where we are. And we're only, unfortunately, what took us to wake up is the loss of it. as we begin to lose the species and the natural lands, the native plants, now we are beginning to understand that our entire human race is really threatened by this.
Okay, Margaret, what we're going to do, and Maureen, if I can ask, we normally keep this right around a half hour, but I'd like to extend this just a bit and allow these Q&A, but let's be quick with our questions and quick with our answers, Margaret. We'll get as many as we can. Maureen, does that make sense?
Yes, I can. I'll start you off if you're ready, Dennis.
Please.
Okay, regarding our outer harbor, how can we win back the public narrative so to emphasize nurturing the natural environment and all the wealth that goes with it versus the current narrative of developing the built environment for limited/private use and profit?
Well, to that speaker and everybody else, come to this this meeting that we're having at the Science Museum on November 11th, 11/11. That's exactly what we're going to be talking about. How do we make that change in our mindset? And I think there'll be a lot of people there that can talk about that, because it is a mindset that's changing. But, we have to be honest with understanding that, development for the sake of development does not necessarily empower or enrich us. It impoverishes us.
Okay, next question is STAMP and populated towns or highly populated areas necessarily incompatible with an environmental, productive, and sustainable area like the Alabama swamps, or can they coexist?
A lot of people have said, why doesn't Stamp take an old shopping mall, the Boulevard Mall? I don't know, some old, now defunct, no offense to Boulevard Mall, I don't really know whether it's defunct, but one of these shopping malls that is no longer, but it's been developed, and to some extent for environmental purposes ruined. Why not build there in an area that's already developed, already connected by roads, already paved and hardened? Why take one of the best areas in New York State for habitat, and not just for our habitat, but for the migration, the global migration from south to north? I mean, why take it? So no, it's not compatible, because everything has to be created. It's extremely expensive. They have to put in roads, they have to put in water, they have to put in infrastructure of all kinds, power lines, pipelines, and that is not only incredibly destructive but very expensive. So no, building in areas that are not already built upon is not a good idea, especially in this day and age.
Okay, and finally, it's not a question, it's more of a comment. Suggest providing this information in order to initiate change to Plug Power shareholders, parentheses owners, from inside Plug Power via becoming shareholders of Plug Power and requesting environmental changes. Plug Power stock is only valued at $6.22 today.
Wow, that's interesting. I didn't know that. Well, that's a good approach. I know that has been done a lot in this, climate change resistance to some of the big energy companies and so forth. People have infiltrated the shareholders and gone to the corporations themselves and negotiated changes. That might be, that is something we could definitely talk about on November 11th. I personally, at this time, think that I can't see how this development can be allowed to proceed, given what has happened already, which is, I didn't mention, but the pipelines have leaked, the endangered species have left. I mean, it's already done a fair amount of damage. So But what do I know? I'm only one, and I think that on November 11th, when we talk about it, it's be exactly questions like that or suggestions.
Well, Margaret, I'll answer your rhetorical question. What do I know? You know plenty. And great that you shared it with us today. And we'll give another reminder, 11/11 is an important meeting at the Science Museum, and certainly I hope the audience considers attending and mentions it to others. Thanks, Margaret. Great job. We will continue our this intersection of commerce and our environment, and figure our way out of this. We've got to figure our way out of this. Both are important, not either or, both and. All right, thanks for joining us, folks. Hope you'll join us again next Tuesday, October 31st, one of our 5 Tuesday months, which I've always labeled the art of investing, and especially investing with values. So really just piggybacks what we just spoke about moments ago. Our co-host, JD Hartman, will be with us, and we're going to have Fritz Abel. And the topic will be, Fritz Abel is CEO and co-founder of a company here in Buffalo, Materials IN. And the topic will be the commercialization of Dr. Krishna Rajan's proprietary methodology to improve companies' materials usage in their products, from the operations and performance to sustainability. We'll find out what all those words mean next week. So join us then, folks. Thank you. I'm Dennis Galucki. Thank you all. Be well and good day.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you again, Margaret.
Dennis?